So I'm Jordan Cushing. I'm a DOP, originally from Toronto, Canada, and I'm here in London right now with Oliver, talking about cinematography.
My name's Eben Bolter. I'm a cinematographer for film and occasionally TV. I've been shooting for about 10 years, and I'd say I've been sort of a professional cinematographer with an agent for about 5 years.
I'm Zoran Velkovic. I'm a cinematographer, and I've been doing this for over 30 years, I guess.
I grew up loving cinema, loving film, and I think I'm stereotypical in that I think Spielberg's films are my childhood. So Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, I remember seeing Jurassic Park in the cinema when it first came out. I was 10 years old, and it just impacted me so much. The sound, I remember being scared in the cinema, but pretending to not be scared because my sister was sitting next to me, who was age 7 at the time.
As a kid, most everybody has a fascination with movies. Now, there's a few things in my own life that I think I could point to as key moments. I was thinking about it this morning. One, my father was a TV journalist who went to film school, so he always, tried to expose us as kids to movies that he liked and that were good, but also kind of lifted the curtain a little bit just to explain how some things were done, which I think kids always like to know a secret, right? So that's part of it, and that led into, there used to be a toy called Adventure People made by Fisher-Price. This is sort of pre-Star Wars, or around the same time as Star Wars figures from the original Star Wars series. And they were, I had a set which was a TV news crew, which I guess my dad got me because it was related to his field. But in it there was a little tiny toy camera that had a kind of ground glass on it, and you could look in the camera and actually compose images and focus and so on. It was quite cool. And so I played with that a lot.
And then when I went to sort of college and university, I became, more articulate in film and more aware of directors and more aware of how films were made. And I always knew I wanted to work in film in some way. But to me, movies were these sort of perfect, brilliant things that these geniuses made somewhere. And I kind of never thought I could do that. So I saw films as more finished products, as more things to do something with. So I started looking into going into owning a cinema, or going into distribution, or going into sales, or something to do with films, but films as finished products.
I was always kind of split personality in a sense. I wanted to study physics and mechanical engineering, but then I had a kind of artistic type streak, which I always wanted. I was very interested.
The final thing that kind of, I think, clinched it was seeing the Muppet movie, which was the original Jim Henson Muppet movie, and my father gave me a copy of the American Cinematographer magazine from that film, and in it there's a bunch of diagrams about how they got the puppets to drive the cars and all the various setups in it, both from a photography side but also a visual effects point of view. And so that, to me, was fantastic. It really exposed me to the world of filmmaking alongside a film that I love.
So kind of when I decided what to study for, I went for mechanical engineering. Yeah. But then it was like early 20s when I started, because I always liked the film and art and music and everything. And I was doing all of those kind of like as a hobby. And I started like making little films with the friends, which started winning awards at festivals. So step by step, I got into that, and then fell in love with the film and never looked back since. But when I started, I was shooting my own films, which I directed, and I was shooting other people's films because I knew how to use a camera. And I realized then, actually, step by step, I prefer cinematography as a purest form of filmmaking for me. That's my kind of vocation.
I had this sort of mini revelation, I guess, that I'd always been into photography, taking photographs. I ended up in a marketing job at one point, and they trained me in filming and editing for kind of corporate videos. But that was only like a placement job on my business studies degree, and I never saw that as cinema, as filmmaking. It was just like a job, it was a little thing. So I'd learned that, and I knew a lot about cinema. And then one day, a friend of mine asked me to shoot a short film. And because I'd learned camera work and I knew about photography, I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I just sort of found that because I'd been such a cinema geek my whole life, I knew about cinematography without trying to, without me trying to learn cinematography. I just knew what shots were and why you use shots in a certain way. And I had this sort of inbuilt knowledge or whatever that I'd built up just through cinema.
Yeah. I think I was interested in the filmmaking world in general, but there was something about the craft, the specific craft of cinematography, because it was both artistic, but also there was a technical side to it, and there was this illusion side that I think appealed to me. That really drew me.
So yeah, I ended up shooting this thing and it went quite well. It actually got into the Raindance Film Festival, first thing I shot, and that led to another short film, and that led to another short film. And I pretty much figured out, this is probably age 25, which is ridiculous, what a cinematographer was. And I kind of realized it's my dream job because it's cinema, but it's also technology, and it's also photography, and it's art, and it was just this sort of dream job that I didn't know existed. So I was really dumb to not find cinematography earlier. I wish I'd found it when I was 15, but I found it when I was 24 or 25, which is quite embarrassing.
So for me, I mean, in order to get access to the tools, the professional tools, it meant I went to film school, and then I started working on sets on low-budget independent productions, music videos and things like that.
My engineering kind of 4-year studying time. I started making films when I was, and then step by step decided this is it. That's what I'm gonna do for my, for the rest of my life.
Once I realised this is my dream job, and I've got a little bit of a knack for it, I was like, well, I've got to catch up with people who've gone to film school. I've got a lot to learn. So I spent a year of my life absolutely consuming cinematography, so reading every book on lighting, every book on the art of cinematography, watching, making of videos, just scouring YouTube for interviews with DPs, just basically self-teaching myself cinematography, all the while shooting everything I possibly could. So there was a year there where I shot 50 short films in a year, which is sort of ridiculous.
And then got into the camera union, the IATSE in Canada, which is the Cinematographers Guild, as a trainee, and then worked as a trainee and then a second assistant. I did a little bit of focus pulling outside of that world, and that's where I kind of got a broader sense of what working in the industry was all about and what the tools were and how to actually make use of them, being able to watch people up close doing the job.
And I would just shoot any old shit, frankly. I kind of went in thinking every single thing I shoot I can learn on. I'll do a horror film, I'll do a comedy, this script's crap, but let's have fun with it. And I was sort of learning, making mistakes, figuring out what I liked, figuring out what I was good at.
But in parallel with that, obviously, you can only learn so much by watching. In parallel with that, I was trying to shoot as much as I could all the time. So through film school and then thereafter, I have always been shooting something. And then at some point, in the early 2000s, I stopped assisting altogether.
That eventually led to a feature film, which is a very low budget feature film, but just doing that first feature film, just ticking that box, led to the second feature film. Again, low budget, but pretty good actually, pretty good script, good cast. That went well, that led to a third feature film, that led to an agent, and really I've just kept doing that. I've kept shooting, I've kept keeping an open mind, kept learning, and just sort of done it that way, which I think is quite untraditional, but I've learned cinematography my way, and that seems to work for some people.
And there were two groups at the time amongst our friends, and half of them kind of wanted to do assisting jobs, and half of them wanted to study formally as a kind of filmmaking and stuff. So I was the second group. I decided then that I wanted to learn as much as possible about that, and the film school gave me opportunity. So after finishing, I got a degree in my engineering, I went for film school another 4 years, but that was cinematography, which does not exist here. It's in Eastern Europe. They've got a different kind of departments, 4 years full-time, everything about cinematography. So I kind of loved that part, and then after that started doing it.
So the easy analogy, I think, is if you compare it to something like carpentry, it's like you can go to woodshop school or whatever it's called and be taught how to make a chair, and you'll make a brilliant chair and you'll do it the right way and blah blah blah. Or you can just get tons of wood and figure it out and make 1,000 chairs, and they'll start off horrible and fall over and fall apart and whatever, but eventually this person will end up with a chair and this person will end up with a chair, and they're both great, and some people prefer this one because they prefer it done properly, traditionally, whatever, and some people will prefer this chair, and I think I'm this guy. But hopefully I have a lot of respect for proper cinematography, and I have tried to do my homework and learn from the masters, and hopefully I'm actually more in the middle. Even though I've come from that route, I've learned a lot of that stuff. So
And the one thing film school of any kind gives you a taste, lets you do your own work and experiment, but the thing that you get out of it that's most valuable is contacts that might, that are going to be the people that you collaborate with, at least initially, maybe until you break into new networks, to new groups.
I truly think in this day and age with iPhones and everything else, everybody can shoot. You can pick up a camera and shoot, and everybody does shoot now. So you can just figure it out for yourself. And I think there is a whole generation of cinematographers who are going to, imagine starting cinematography today. You've got these gyro stabilized GoPros that can just do impossible stuff easily. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's exciting to think what they are going to be able to do 10 years from now, coming into a world where this technology is already here.
I have to say that my early career as an assistant was great for opening up, just really opening up what the possibilities were. I got to see a lot of some very high-profile DOPs work. Often, I'd be doing dailies, so you'd just drop in for a day or two and get a sense of what was going on. But sort of my bread and butter was working on TV series and movies of the week. So they were quite fast turnaround, high page counts. And so that, watching guys do that on a day in, day out basis for months on end, I took a lot from that.
I've learned so much from so many cinematographers, and I've tried to take what I like from lots of them. I mean, to sort of give you the biggest, most obvious one, I think something about Roger Deakins that I really love is that I read an interview with him, or I read it or watched it, where he was talking about Shawshank Redemption, and he was doing a scene with Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins, and he had this plan for how he's going to light it and shoot it, and the actors sat in to do a little blocking rehearsal, whatever, and they were so good, they were so electric, that he was like, look, let's just get 2 cameras and just shoot straight away. Let's not do that. And he said it's like his favourite scene in the film. It had so much magic, he just wanted to capture that. And I believe in that. I think like the role of the cinematographer isn't just to make something beautiful, it's to be empathetic to actors, to directors, to first ADs, to time restrictions, to, it's filmmaking. It's a collaborative medium, and I think I'm not the sort of cinematographer who'll go, okay, I know you want to cry, Meryl Streep, but give me 3 hours, I'm going to light you perfectly. I think you have to feel the room and feel, right, we need to do this quickly, so let's simplify that, and just shoot it. And occasionally there's something that's going to take time, but you have to manage that with actors, and you have to win their trust. And I think there's a real relationship with actors that's sort of not talked about very often. I mean, I think we're right there in the eyepiece, and they're right here crying, and there's a trust to that. And very often, as soon as someone calls cut, as I come away from that eyepiece, I'm the first person they look at. And you have that little unspoken nod or whatever it is that just gives you this sort of mutual respect or trust or whatever it is. And I really believe that that's an important part of cinematography, and it's not something that's obvious. You don't look at a film and think, that DP was good with actors. It's obviously, the job ultimately is to sort of shoot the film. But I think Roger Deakins is somebody who he knows when to do less. He knows when he's not the most important person in the room, And I believe in that too. So I get a lot of confidence from one of the masters talking like that to myself.
Yeah, I mean, generally, in this kind of business or whatever you call it, you have to be excited about it. You can't just go and do this like any other job. And I always tell my students, if you think you're going to earn lots of money doing this, don't do it. It's too hard work. You know, money might come or might not, but you have to pay your bills. But at the end of the day, I was excited about films I've seen. And at the time, cinematographers who were kind of leading every year the films which are coming out, which are exciting about cinematography is particularly, apart from creative side, is connected with technical side. So new technologies coming are always giving opportunity for new expressions, and that's a great excitement. And step by step, you know, you lead. So yeah, I mean, certainly I was inspired by all great cinematographers. Still, I am basically watching the old films and new stuff. So
you pick up on things when you're watching a film, for instance, that that appeal to you or that you don't like, and you sort of, you know, file those things. I like to look at a lot of photographs with directors before embarking on sort of longer projects to get a sense of what they want the final film to look like, but also to be inspired.
I think purely visually, pure cinematography, I think Conrad Hall is someone who I just always go back to.
One of the things I made a cinematography independent study for myself, not unlike what you're doing, when I was at film school, and set myself a number of assignments, and a few of them was replicating, you know, sort of iconic images that I liked in movies. So like the projector scene sequence in the beginning of Citizen Kane, for instance. Yeah. So to watch something kind of deconstructed and then try to recreate it, that I think was a great exercise. Now, having said that, I don't think that's really influenced, that specific you know, reference hasn't really influenced how what my aesthetic is. But I think that you know, once you start to see or appreciate how things are achieved, you know, by being on set and watching other people do them, you can then steal a little bit here and there. Either it's the technique or it's the resultant look that you want, or you can work backwards from an image that you love and say, okay, well, how would I achieve that in this context?
And another one is Spielberg, and I like, it's such a stupidly easy big name, but he's such a great visual storyteller that I think I've always got in the back of my mind, what would Spielberg do? And I know he's a director, but he's such a visual storyteller that it almost challenges you to do better and to think of something bigger and to, you know, how do we cover this? What would Spielberg do? Yeah. And there's something about that just sort of makes you go, yeah, let's compare ourselves to the best ever, and we won't be that good, but we'll at least be sort of trying. Yeah.
Generally speaking, there's two things to consider, and sometimes this can be achieved, you know, with the same lighting approach. But there's two things to consider: how your subjects are lit and how your background is lit. Often the background, you know, hopefully you work with a great art department. The background will have practicals in it. It'll have, it will get you there. It'll lay the foundation for a nice looking image already. So, you know, when you're talking about taking ideas or techniques, it's usually about a specific thing, like, you know, oh, the key is, how simple was that dinner party that we just did, you know, like he did a very simple thing, and you know, I can take that and put that in my bag of tricks.
Things are changing, and that's, for me personally, that's very exciting, because, you know, you are doing your job, and I always want to make next film better and different, and that's my goal, my challenge. That's what I like about this. So every time you go out, you make, okay, I made using a particular wide angles I wanted, or whatever else, and then next one I wanted kind of like to play with depth of, because the story led that way, but you have to interpret the story the best you can, and generally you have to find your leading kind of visual identity for that particular film, and then, you know, develop it the best you can. And for the next one, I'd like to use something else.
it's about blocking. I think blocking's so important in cinematography, because you can talk with a director for months in prep and recce a room and go, this is beautiful, wouldn't this be cool, wouldn't this be cool, wouldn't this be cool? And then two actors can get there and go, we want to be over here. And we want to be over here for this reason. And you go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then everything you've done in prep goes out the window. So I think it's always about talking about references, talking about shots, talking about locations, lighting, and sort of thinking this could work, this could work, this could work, but you've always got to build in flexibility, because you never know when an actor's going to go, actually, I want to sit on that chair, because that makes sense for my character. Fine, you know. And so it's all a reaction, and I think you've got to look at what actors do with blocking in rehearsals and figure out how you get the best out of that visually. So for me, my sort of rule or whatever is just to not be too fixed to anything.
There is professional conduct. You know, if you're doing drama, feature film or something, there are certain you know, paths you have to follow. Yeah. So generally you follow that as from the point once you go on the set. So after discussions and all the rest with the director and preparing things, you've got a vision.
But when it comes to approaching a project, I mean, you want to have at first a good sense of what the director wants, right? You want to have your own impressions about the project, whether it be a web video or a movie. You want to have a sense of what you think it ought to look like, but the most important thing is that you have a good clear understanding of what the director wants, and that you guys could get on the same page and establish a kind of visual language that you both agree is the most suitable. Now, it's not to say that they are dictatorial necessarily about what it should look like. That should hopefully be a conversation, and then images. Nothing can help you more than sharing pictures that speak to what the mood is, or what the tone is that you want to achieve.
For me, it's important to be excited about the vision I've got. I would like to be excited about it. If I'm not, I know it's not good. I have to find the way I'm gonna, and then once I'm excited about making it, everything is easy and things fall in place. Not always you've got that vision straight away. You know, it's a creative process is not that straightforward. But generally, I think for me that's very important. And technically, you just go on a set, you prepare everything, then the actors come, they block the scene. Then if they change anything, they go away, you bring your team, you tweak your lighting and sort out. So technically it happens as it should. But for me, rule is I have to be excited about it. When I say it, I'm not just, okay, yeah, I'll just put the lights to kind of capture this. I would like that to give me something more emotional as an image to myself. Yes. But that, after that, audience hopefully will feel the same, I guess.
So storyboards I always find slightly a waste of time, because there is a reason to do storyboards if you're doing a car chase or a big VFX shot, of course. But I think you've got to, films are a reaction, I think. You can plan them, write them, obviously, and have this perfect thing in your head, but ultimately you're dealing with humans and the world, and things change. And quite often, with all the best plans in the world, an actor will go, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? And you go, yeah. And why don't we do that? And suddenly it's 10 times better than you ever could have dreamed of. So it's always about keeping an open mind, never sort of throwing anything away, and just being open to ideas. And I watch a lot of films, and it just keeps me in the game, if you know what I mean. I've always got, how did they do that? How did they do that? What was cool about that? What was cool about that? And then I'll see an actor do something and I think, oh, that thing that film did. If we did a version of that, like a one-er or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. For me, it's an open mind. It's not, I don't sort of go in and think, this is how we should do this. I go in and watch and listen. I think DPs need to linger when actors are rehearsing and blocking. And where you watch blocking from is crucially important. So if I start to see that actors are sort of doing a thing, and I think, wouldn't it be cool if we were here, I'll quite often try and get the director to watch it from where I'm thinking it could work, because that just puts them in that position. If you've got a director who's sitting on completely the wrong side watching a rehearsal, sometimes you don't want them to sort of go too far down that rabbit hole without you if you know that it won't work for some boring reason. So, you know, if it's completely front lit by a window, I'll always try and bring them round so that it's backlit and looks nicer. Or, for example, something like that. So yeah, blocking and rehearsals, I think, and keeping an open mind and reacting to that.
Now, in terms of narrative stuff, I like to have some kind of arc, you know, a beginning and a middle and an end to the visuals, or some kind of differentiation, so that there is a visual journey that may be subtle, that accompanies the storyline, so that, you know, there are cues within the scenes that are cumulative, that have an effect to support the journey of the characters in the movie. That doesn't really apply to a TV commercial, for instance. So when the approach to those is often you look at references and you say, oh, I want it to be like that or like this. And then you have other much more practical considerations, like what the budget is and where you're shooting and how long you have and how big a crew you have. And those are all kind of the same, they're all kind of stem from the same source, but you kind of have to take stock of your resources and say, actually, if we, you know, approach it this way, it can look a certain way, and that will enable us to, for instance, have more crew so they can pre-rig, for instance, if we have a very short amount of time with a performer, you know, we may need to have several sets ready to go one after the other. So you need to kind of, that has to factor into how you're going to actually execute. So there's a lot of problem solving that goes on, sort of trying to maximize the results with whatever tools you have. Because it's very rare, even, you know, even the bigger the budget, the more is being asked, right? The more it needs to end up on screen. So I don't think you are ever in a place, well, I certainly have never been in a place, and it seems, my impression, having worked on some bigger Hollywood films back in my assisting days, you're never in a place where you have everything you want. There's always compromise. There's always decisions, and you have to prioritize that. So you start with kind of an idealized version, and then you try to marry that idea with what you have to execute it with. It's only natural that you are always changing at least a little bit. Something about your fundamental aesthetic probably doesn't change. So what you find pleasing may evolve a little bit, or how you execute it and you refine it maybe, that may change, but what you actually like, I don't think that changes kind of radically.
When I started, it was a film. So, and I was the first generation in a film school to study film and TV camera. Suddenly, that was 1976. 78, well, a long time ago. Let's put it that way. I kind of, because, you know, for the film, you have to study inside out everything because you can't see it. In order, and if you make mistake, that's it, you're out. Somebody who has made mistake is continuing. So generally we had to learn a lot, and apart from creative and technical things. So because we were first generation to study film, video rather, as well, so they had no teachers for us. So they brought the top experts in electronics to teach us technology about it, because the filmmaking artistic kind of thing was pretty much similar as film. You know, it's just technology. So it was like the best European engineers and experts actually taught us, which was absolutely brilliant, because after that, after I spent 4 years doing that full time, anything new comes my way, I just, you just adopt it. You just you know, fit it into your picture and move on. And technology changed a lot. I have not changed I believe, I don't know really, it's very difficult to say from inside. Every time I approach pretty similar way. But technology changed to ease the things, to make them simpler. You can see things on monitor, which actually, unfortunately, for younger generations, they drop the need to learn so much about technology because, you know, it's accessible.
Yeah, something I think about a lot, because I think my work, I look at the first feature film I ever shot and it feels like a different person. It's like looking at a photograph of you when you're a kid and you think, that's me, but I don't almost recognize myself, or I don't almost recognize being that person. And there's a blissful ignorance to the first feature I shot that's so sort of, I don't care about the rules, I don't care about how you should do it, let's just do it this way, that I'm quite almost envious of it. I worry that if I shot that same film tomorrow, I'd be more proper, I'd do things properly, I'd be safer maybe. And so I think I've become slightly more normal as a DP, in a bad way. And it's about trying to hold on to something that makes you you, and yeah, I'm very aware of that at the moment, that there's a right way to do things traditionally, and there's my way of doing things, and I'm trying to follow instinct and not worry so much about rules and that kind of thing. I think the instinct is far more important than the rules.
I think simplicity and flexibility are more and more appealing to me now. And that's also come along sort of hand in glove with the changes in tools, right? That you can deploy a lot more kind of very simple solutions. But that, I think, is, yeah, I think with the move to try to do more with less, it kind of forces you to think about things in a more simplified way.
But in a sense, reversibly, that worked, that younger generation, somehow I found out, they are not going into the whole thing deep enough. You know, just like you switch on the monitor and the young director says, yeah, great. I said, oh, I haven't started yet. So what do you mean? I said, okay, switch it off, let me light it. And then I switch it off. Wow. That's the thing is, what we started with image in our head, what we imagine, and then recreate that for the camera. Now is much easier to see the picture and tweak the way you want. So in a sense, it's a slight difference, but certainly I still do the same as I always did, I think.
Yeah. But I think if you do look at the films I've shot, I mean, I think they've got better. They're much better films, better actors, bigger budgets. But my early stuff is maybe a bit more pure. And so I'm trying to bring some of that back into stuff I do now, and throw some of what I know now out of my head and just go, let's just do it that way.
I think, like everybody, you know, I'm quite critical of my own work when I watch it back, because you think of all the missed opportunities, and you think also, especially in something long form, you know, you read the script, and you have this, you imagine the ideal version of the film, and then you talk with the director and you kind of flesh out that imagined version of the movie, and then day by day you replace what you've imagined with what you've shot, so that at the end, right, you have that imagined thing doesn't exist anymore. All you have is brushes. You have the footage. So I forget why I was saying that. Yeah. So that separation that exists between the idealized, imagined version and the actual what you've managed to achieve in your day, you know, the closer you can get those things, the better. Now there are plenty of cases where what you imagined was not nearly as interesting as what you actually got, and a big part of that is, you know, the actors can bring so much. You know, that is what it's all about for the most part, is the performance. And so, you know, as somebody who's just reading the script, you know, I am not necessarily able to bring as much creativity to that side of my own internal version. But you do tend to look at your own work, I think, most critically, because you have a sense of what you were trying to achieve.
So my advice to anyone who wants to be a cinematographer is just to start shooting. And if you can't film actors, then start taking photographs. Go out and take pictures. I mean, like, one of the best things you can possibly do is get a good street camera and go out walking, put it around your neck and just take photos of people. Be subtly just taking pictures of people at bus stops, or just there's always shots, there's always composition, there's always lighting. And I think you've just got to do that almost every day. And every time you do it, you'll get better. And you'll look at your images and go, that didn't work and that did. And you'll start to develop who you are and what you like. And I think in this day and age, you've got a phone in your pocket that's also a great camera, and you can just take pictures and grade them on your phone and figure out what you like. I mean, so much of cinematography is a reaction and an opinion. So you'll line up a shot, look at it on a monitor, and really you just have to critically go, what's wrong with it? How can I make this better? Why don't we kill that light? Why don't we make that more angular? Why don't we? And you know, ultimately it's being a critic, really. But you've got to be a critic then and there, so that you can try and improve it. So yeah, my advice is just to shoot as much as possible. If you haven't got the confidence, or you don't think you've got the experience to shoot, then I think you're wrong.
I think it's one thing to have your own camera and just go out and shoot a bunch of nice looking pictures, nice images in natural light, because you can learn a lot about composition. You can learn a lot about what makes a good image if you're able to dissect it in terms of how it looks, in terms of the lighting, so that you can then, when you have tools at your disposal, try to apply that learning.
For advice to young people is just to learn as much as you can. It's the key thing is in this kind of special job is so multi-layered, and technically you have to do so much in order to be able to apply that in your creative vision. And key thing is, not straight away you start using everything. First of all, things are limiting. You learn about this, learn about it, oh, I have to use it like that. Step by step. It does take some time, as some of my colleagues say, about 10,000 hours it needs for you to become kind of good at what you're doing. But suddenly there is a feeling, that's what I felt, like coming above the water. You know, if you're kind of just going underwater and swimming and just go up, and suddenly you can see things around, and you start using elements you never thought you would be using it that way.
You know, I try to take notes about things that worked and didn't work, so that I can remember down the road and look back and say, oh, when we did that thing on such and such a project.
For me personally, it's very important to, you're never happy. Yeah. That is the key, because our job is creating. Once you are creating something out of thin air, basically out of your idea or director's idea is it's pretty loose thing. So generally creating keeps, I mean, that's the way I learned, and that's why I adopted as a normal, is once we've got a image, there are certain ways to improve that image. And you keep going, because you know, it's never, oh yeah, that's perfect. It's never perfect. It's good enough, that's fine. But then, you know, even in coloring later and great, you always try to kind of make it better. And that's the, you know, exciting part about, because you know, you never get tired of doing this. Yeah. 10, 12-hour day, it's fine, because you know, you're excited about, it's like a children playing in a sandpit, basically. That's all about.
If you look at other people's work, you know, I'll watch, you know, the work of some of my DOP friends, and I'll think, oh, that's great, or be a little secretly jealous of what they managed to achieve there, and then I'll say, oh, I love this thing that you did, and they'll say, oh, but this and that and the other, because they knew what they wanted to achieve, and it may have fallen short in some way, or they may not recognize the things that succeeded beyond what they had hoped for, and I think I'm the same way with my own work as well. Hopefully there's somebody else out there who's looking at it and thinking, oh, that's really good. Yeah. I don't know about that, but yeah, I think everybody's most critical of their own work, and that pushes you to hopefully learn from the mistakes you make.
And analyzing your image is a key. So people sometimes shoot things and just give away and move on. But for me, in order for me to improve, is always I would like to see, oh, what could I do better out of this? Can I change, if I just move a little bit there and change the perspective, or then waited another 10 minutes for the light to hit the shadow, anything you can think of, it's actually absolutely brilliant exercise in order to advance.
So in terms of advice, start with taking pictures, looking at movies, breaking them down in terms of what's appealing and how you guess that's come about. But you do need to get on some sets to see how those things are actually achieved in a practical way, and you also need to do some of that work yourself, as much of that work as you can, so that you can learn from your own mistakes, and so you can start to develop how you tackle things, how you would approach a given circumstance.
I think if you're only interested in shooting bigger films and you want to go the assisting route, then that's absolutely a valid thing to do, but you should shoot yourself at the same time. Just taking photographs. I really think Instagram, whatever, just take pictures and grade it, and you'll learn and you'll develop a style that's your own. And I think if you are going to go the big film set route and become a crew member, 99% of it is your attitude and whether people like you, because this is an industry of people and ultimately it's relationships. And the directors I work with are people I like. They become my friends, not for any cynical reason, just because we like each other and we do the same thing. And my crew that I've built up, I've built my crew around a group of people I want to hang out with, because we spend our lives doing this job. You go away for 4 months to do a job, I'd rather be with friends and people I trust and like than just the best focus puller. I think I've built my crew. My focus puller, for example, I met him 6 years ago. He was a trainee with no experience, but he had a really good attitude. He was a really nice guy. He's done every job I've done for 6 years. He's now not just my focus puller, but he was the best man at my weddings.
At the beginning is a frightening. It's technically so many things. You're always concerned would you do right thing and all the rest. But once you start combining things and having fun, that's never-ending story, I believe.
Yeah.
For the last 35 years, been all right. So.